Since the dawn of civilization, the powerful have conspired to twist the course of history to suit their own designs. Like puppeteers, a few shadowy figures could still be pulling the strings of destiny for billions. Those who cry conspiracy are usually mocked at, for sometimes the truth is so obvious it goes unnoticed. Are those merely paranoid fantasies cooked up to feed the appetite of paperback readers and web surfers, but which bear no relation to reality? Or are we living out some perfectly executed plan? Wars, revolutions, social movements, terrorist attacks. Everything is given an official explanation. But perhaps nothing is what it seems to be. Let's dare to unveil the incredible world of secret societies.
Of all the secret societies we know of, there is one that stands out from the rest due to certain characteristics that make it especially menacing. Its treacherous tenets, the scandal and the paranoia they've unleashed, and more disturbing, the suspicion that since its creation, it has intervened in each and every major world event that has steered the course of history. The Illuminati of Bavaria, the most fearsome secret society in history. More than 200 years ago, here in Germany, in what used to be the independent electorate of Bavaria, a secret society was formed whose objective simply spelled world domination. Its strategy to abolish all religions and governments in order to take control of humanity under a unified state, with no countries, no borders, and under the command of a single leader. Its name, the Illuminati of Bavaria. Perhaps you've never heard of them, or perhaps you have, and are familiar with some of the theories that blame them for all the bad things that have befallen us. Theories that intertwine verifiable facts with delirious conspiracy theories that run the gamut from the United States to aliens, but have a common thread in the founding tenet of the Illuminati, the creation of a new world order. And perhaps, and only perhaps, that great jumble of information and disinformation that today pervades the media is also part of a broader, sinister plan.
The Order of the Illuminati was officially prescribed more than 200 years ago. But if we pay close attention to subsequent events, we shall find an alarming succession of coincidences that suggest strongly that they are still among us, and that their power, far from having waned, is still very much in evidence.
To find out just how much is fact and how much is fiction, we shall start off by learning what history has to tell us about this mysterious order. Then we shall investigate what has happened since the order's demise. Finally, we shall draw our own conclusions.
On May the 1st, 1776, Adam Weishaupt, a young canon law professor at the University of Bavaria, founded the Order of the Perfectibilists, also known as the Illuminati of Bavaria. Though it was influenced by the Illuminist trends of the time, the name of the order was inspired by the Spanish Alumbrados and the French Illuminés, old Gnostic sects that upheld the communion of man and God without the intermediation of the Church. Initially, the stated objectives of the Illuminati seemed entirely harmless and philanthropic. To stimulate a human and sociable vision, support virtue where it may be threatened or oppressed by vice, to promote the progress of merit-worth people and foster the benefit of those deprived of education. Adam Weishaupt.
Little is known of Adam Weishaupt, but he was undoubtedly a mysterious man. Even his name has given rise to speculation. Adam Weishaupt, in German, can be broken down into Adam, the first man, Weis, knowledge, or wisdom, Haupt, leader. That is to say, the first man that leads the wise. An entirely fitting name to define his role in the order he established and in the sinister plans he propounded.
Adam Weishaupt was born in Ingolstadt, Bavaria, in the south of Germany in 1748. A convert from Judaism, he was raised and educated by Jesuits. A precocious intellectual, at the age of 28, he was Dean of the Jesuit University of Canon Law at Ingolstadt. In spite of his apparent religious fervour and Catholic zeal, Weishaupt was obsessed with ancient Egyptian rites and rituals, and at the same time he also maintained regular contact with Freemasons, the historic enemies of the Catholic Church. Like many thinkers of that era, he admired Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who insisted that man was noble and free by nature, and could be governed without the need for religious or established institutions. The only practice that one ought to teach children is that they should never submit to one. Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
The Illuminati were created within a Masonic lodge to which Weishaupt belonged. By that time, Freemasonry was already a prestigious secret society of long standing, and its excessive secrecy and closeness to the powers that be had turned it into the ideal nurturing ground for Weishaupt's order, who began to infiltrate it. The Freemasons, good keepers of secrets, would contribute knowingly or otherwise to the Illuminati plan.
For his order, Weishaupt borrowed the strict, military-style hierarchical structure of the Jesuits and divided it into 13 degrees. First level, nursery, preparation, novice, Minerval, Illuminatus minor. Second level, Freemasonry, subdivided into 2 orders, Symbolic Apprentice, Fellow of the Craft, Master Freemason, and Scottish, Illuminatus Major, and Illuminatus Dirigens. Third level, Mysteries, subdivided into 2 orders, Lesser Mysteries, Priest and Regent, and Greater Mysteries, Magus, Rex, and King, or Areopagite.
Curiously enough, the order was an incomplete structure. There were many minervals, but the higher hierarchies were never completely filled, and they only existed in Weishaupt's mind, who proclaimed himself king, or Areopagite.
Up until the year 1780, the Order of the Illuminati was only known within the boundaries of Bavaria. With the inclusion of Baron Knigge, an enthusiastic Freemason reformer, new recruits flooded in. New academies for the Minervals were established and strict codes for secrecy enforced. The novices, or Minervals, did not know anyone in the order other than their instructor. If, after 3 years as Minervals, they were chosen to continue their training, they went on to become Illuminatus minor, and were permitted to know a little more about the real objectives of the order.
Weishaupt designed for his order a complex system of codes and aliases that seemed to pre-announce a strategy that would allow them to continue working underground sometime in the future. The Illuminati became a true secret society within another, that is, within Freemasonry itself. It soon became clear that the true objectives of Weishaupt and his Illuminati went far beyond simple altruism.
The order was symbolized as the letter O with a dot in the center. Everyone assumed pseudonyms inspired by Roman and Greek history. Adam Weishaupt, Spartacus; Baron Knigge, Philo; Franz Xavier Zwack, Cato; Marquis of Costanza, Diomedes, and so on. Cities and regions also received coded Hellenic names: Munich, Athens; Frankfurt, Thebes; Bavaria, Greece. Letters were coded with numbers in the lower degrees, and with hieroglyphics in the higher degrees.
Just 7 years after he had founded his order, Adam Weishaupt boasted of having more than 600 followers in Bavaria alone, and many more in the rest of Europe. The order attracted influential people, including nobles and members of the clergy.
Paradoxically, active members of the Catholic Church could be found among the ranks of the Illuminati. Perhaps these recruits were open-minded members of the clergy who had been attracted by the order's modernizing and humanistic views. But it seems equally likely that the Catholic Church had decided to infiltrate the order in order to learn more about its true objectives. If this were the case, the results were soon plain to see.
The order of the Illuminati spread across Europe like wildfire, and soon the powers that be, the Catholic Church and Freemasonry itself, tried to put a limit to its expansion. Adam Weishaupt went into exile and worked underground. His secret files exposed and his true motives discovered. But the Brotherhood had already dispersed, and all its branches were prepared to act anonymously and in utmost secrecy.
In 1790, the Order of the Illuminati had officially ceased to exist in Bavaria, Prussia, and the other domains of which is now modern Germany. But perhaps their disappearance was little more than a charade. After all, a secret society is born to act in the shadows, and when it is discovered, it must die in order to go on living.
The order itself could perish, but not its objectives. The Illuminati fire had started, and it would be unstoppable.
To return to man his fundamental rights of equality and liberty, we should begin by destroying every religion and every civil society, and finish abolishing property. Adam Weishaupt. The secret society, known as the Order of the Illuminati, rose in the late 18th century. It was not the first secret society, and it would not be the last. But its name would always remain a magnet for conspiracy theorists, who maintain that it is still active among us today.
5 years after the Order of the Illuminati was created, Baron Knigge joined its ranks. He was the man behind its fast expansion and its attempt to infiltrate all of Freemasonry. Knigge, a bankrupt nobleman, a Freemason, a scholar and an occultist, found that Weishaupt and his Illuminati gave a new sense of purpose to his life.
Knigge joined the order and worked for the Illuminati cause with fervour and conviction. In very little time, he was able to infiltrate most of the major Freemasonry lodges, with the exception of the English and Scottish ones, which perhaps due to their conservatism, rejected Knigge's liberal ideas.
But barely 4 years after joining the order, Baron Knigge left, accusing Weishaupt of being a tyrant filled with delusions of grandeur, a megalomaniac that had deceived his own followers by claiming that the order had an ancient origin, when in fact it was a new cult tailor-made for his own personal glory. The events that followed would vindicate Knigge's charge. The innocent and charitable order of the Illuminati had deceitful objectives, and now, thanks to Knigge's contribution, it also had the capacity to achieve them.
A short time after Knigge's desertion, Bavaria was buzzing with rumours that a certain secret order was aiming to put an end to established order and organised religion, and to create a new world order under a single unified government. This information could only have come from either Knigge himself or from those Jesuit infiltrators who had certainly witnessed strange initiation rites.
A great deal has been said about the rituals of secret societies. The Illuminati were no exception. Perhaps the Jesuits who witnessed them decided it was time to act up. As a result of their testimony, the Catholic Church forced the Elector of Bavaria to ban the order.
There were 3 rooms. In the last one there was a richly decorated red throne. On the other side there was a table with a red tablecloth, upon which lay the garments of the regent, a white leather cuirass with a red cross, and a white cloak with another red cross. The candidate walks across this room dressed like a slave, chains hanging from his hands. and the regents say, "Stop, only free men can enter." And the defenders respond, "He is free, he has fled from his oppressors to join the Brotherhood." The room was red and brightly lit. The provincial was seated on the throne, and the other regents were in the middle room. The first room was black. It was used for the preparation of the novice, and in the center upon a platform there was a human skeleton, at whose feet lay a crown and sword. What do you think of these sad spoils? Was he a nobleman or a peasant? The correct thing to do was not to answer. The candidate received the explanation. The human condition is the only thing that matters. After that, the candidate took the oath. From a distance, these rituals seem to be rather naive, and Weishaupt's objectives unobtainable, even risible. But if we continue to analyze the historical events that followed, our laughter might turn to a horrible grimace. In 1783, 4 professors of the Marianas Academy were interrogated at a court of law on account of their belonging to the order. All eventually admitted that the Illuminati abjured Christianity, defended sensual pleasures, liberty, equality, and the right to commit suicide.
The confession was made public and caused a tremendous uproar. How much had the heretics infiltrated the society? What was the reach of their plans for world domination? Who really were these enemies of church and state?
The Elector of Bavaria intended to eradicate this evil as he perceived it, and passed a law prohibiting every kind of secret meeting, a measure that, unfairly or not, affected all of Freemasonry. Finally, by means of another law, he banned the Illuminati altogether. In 1786, the home of Illuminati lawyer von Zwack was raided and various papers and correspondence seized.
But it was a freak event that sealed the destiny of the Illuminati, a bizarre accident that would be taken advantage of by the critics of the order and used to deal them a fatal blow.
On July the 10th, 1785, a mysterious man rode swiftly under the skies of Bavaria. He was the apostate, Abbot Lance, a friend and personal envoy of Adam Weishaupt, and an Illuminati. He never reached his destination. A lightning bolt struck him dead, leaving behind only his charred corpse. Curiously, the papers that he carried were not affected by the fire. When the authorities went through his sack, they found letters and documents that further incriminated the members of the order. Thus Weishaupt could not avoid the disclosure of his true objectives, together with confidential information about his order's most important members. His plans for world domination and the abolition of the state, religion and private property, all penned in his very own handwriting, had come to light. Thus began the Illuminati panic, never to end.
The episode of the lightning-struck rider sealed the fate for the Illuminati. Their world seemed to be coming to an end, but the facts that followed showed that in spite of these setbacks, Weishaupt's influence remained in full force and made him practically untouchable.
In 1785, Weishaupt was dismissed from his university and expelled from Bavaria. Amazingly, instead of sending him to prison, the authorities offered him a compensation payment of 800 florins per year, which he rejected. Weishaupt went into exile, avowing that the order would return 10 times more powerful. Whether or not he kept his word is still a matter for speculation.
Bearing in mind the charges that were levied against them, the lightness of the sentences passed is quite suspicious. Some even had the good fortune to be compensated with ready money. Perhaps the order already had enough political and economic leverage to press on the authorities. The fact is that their enforced exile had an unwanted consequence: the dispersion of the Illuminati to the 4 corners of the globe.
Adam Weishaupt found a safe haven in Regensburg, where he published a pamphlet in which he clarified the charitable principles of the order. He then took up residence in Gotha, whose duke was an Illuminatus. The official story says that he abandoned all political activity and made his peace with the Catholic Church. Thereafter to lead a tranquil life, far removed from conspiracies.
Such a luxurious and peaceful exile strikes as a suspiciously serene end for the leading conspirator of his time. It is reasonable to suppose that Weishaupt could have kept on working despite his low profile. And even if his retirement had been genuine, the order of the Illuminati already had a life of its own, as would soon be detected during the one episode that shook Western civilization the most and lay the groundwork for a true new world order: the French Revolution.
During its heyday, the Order of the Illuminati had extended its tentacles of influence to France. There it recruited, among others, Frederick the Dietrich, the Mayor of Strasbourg, Mirabeau, the politician, and the Duke of Orleans, who recruited followers to the Parisian Freemasonry lodges. The strength of our order lies in its secrecy. It should never appear anywhere under its own name, but always shrouded in another name and another occupation. Baron Weishaupt. The connection between the Illuminati and the Jacobins during the French Revolution of 1789 was denounced by one of the order's most fervent detractors, Abbot Augustin Barruel. Likewise, the Scottish Freemason, author John Robison, devoted a long and verbose chapter of his work to what he regarded as the Illuminati's influence on the revolution. Robison maintained that Weishaupt and the Club of the Illuminati, together with the Club of the Jacobins, controlled the National Assembly, and from Paris ruled all of France.
One wonders if the Illuminati acted in good faith, seeking to free the French from royal oppression, or if the revolution was merely a convenient vehicle for its plans for creating a new world order, free from monarchy and religion, but under their control.
Little more is known about the order, since all the files related to it were conveniently destroyed during Allied bombing of German cities during the Second World War.
Who were the Illuminati? Heroes fighting for liberty and reason, or demented tyrants who sought to enslave the world? The answer has as many facets as there are ways of interpreting history, and the truth is that time has not helped to solve the enigma.
A short time before its apparent disbanding, the Order of the Illuminati had lodges in more than 25 European cities, from Munich to London, including Vienna, Paris, and Naples. Pretty soon its name became associated with other illustrious names, and powerful clans and families that to this day decide the destiny of the world.
Here is where the official history ends and the tracks of the Illuminati disappear. Adam Weishaupt died in 1830, apparently removed from any secret activity. But people noticed that the Illuminati plan for world domination coincided suspiciously with many of the events that apparently arose naturally by the will of the people.
Princes and nations will disappear without violence from the earth. The human race will become one family, and the world the abode of reasonable men. Baron Weishaupt. Up until its apparent dissolution in 1790, the Order of the Illuminati boasted members in all the important European cities. The Catholic Church's attempt to root out and destroy the Order, and the political persecution of its most important leaders had precisely the opposite effect of what was intended. the Illuminati were scattered to the four winds, and in the shadows they moved like fish in water.
Even after the apparent dismissal of the order, there were many who doubted that they had really ceased to operate. Their infiltration had been so widespread that every Freemason could now be suspected of being an undercover Illuminati. So the whole of Freemasonry was proscribed, and there was more to come. The order's reputation quickly spread to the New World. Books by Abbot Agustin Barruel and John Robison alerting the world to the imminent Illuminati peril were published in the recently founded United States, generating panic among their readers. The Paranoia had crossed the Atlantic.
In 1776, the year in which Weishaupt founded his order and began to infiltrate Freemasonry, the United States declared its independence. Many of its founding fathers were Freemasons. It is not known if some of them were subsequently recruited by the Illuminati. What is known is that many American religious communities felt threatened by the freedom of worship guaranteed by the new Constitution, which they denounced as part of an Illuminati conspiracy. In 1798, when the second president of the USA, John Adams, established May the 9th as a day of fasting and worship to implore the heavens' mercy and blessing for the imperiled nation, fingers were pointed at the order founded by Weishaupt, and a wave of panic flowed across New England. We should strive to do all we possibly can to endeavour the advance of the Illuminati in all important public positions. Adam Weishaupt. In Boston, Reverend Jedediah Morse dedicated his sermons to the Illuminati threat. The media echoed his words, but no firm evidence of Illuminati conspiracy was ever uncovered.
An immensely vast, rich and potentially powerful country where the practice of Freemasonry was widespread and accepted was certainly a fertile land in which to sow the Illuminati seed. Up to what point was the Illuminati panic of New England exclusively based on absurd conspiracy theories promoted by zealous religious leaders?
It was none other than Thomas Jefferson who, after reading Abbot Barruel, came out in defense of Adam Weishaupt. In 1800, Jefferson wrote to his friend Madison, "Adam Weishaupt believes in the indefinite perfectibility of man. He thinks he may in time be rendered so perfect that he will be able to govern himself in every circumstance, so as to injure none, and to do all the good he can, to leave government no occasion to exercise their powers over him, and of course to render political government useless. This, you know, is not far removed from our own ideals." Jefferson's main opponents, the Federalist Party, founded by Alexander Hamilton, proclaimed that Jefferson as well as the Democratic Republican Party were all controlled by the Illuminati. Nothing was ever proven. Jefferson's party is the forerunner of the Democrats and Republican parties that today take turns to govern the USA.
The Illuminati paranoia faded out in the 19th century, but almost 100 years later it was reborn, stronger than ever.
In the early 20th century, English right-wing writer Nestor Webster stated without offering any proof that since 1786 a lodge of the Order of the Illuminati had become established in Virginia and 14 other American cities. According to her, this had given rise to a hidden theocracy of Jews, Kabbalists, Masons, anarchists, Illuminati, occultists, and heretics. With her ignorance and racism, Nestor Webster contributed to a renewal of interest in the order she manifestly abhorred, and formally introduced anti-Semitism as an important element in conspiracy theorizing.
Sadly, no conspiracy theory is worth its salt if it does not include the Jews in it. The writings of Nestor Webster may have stoked the flames, but the fact remains that long before that, and long after, theories of world domination have always included economic power, especially international banking, an activity that is often exclusively and mistakenly attributed to Jews. And the Illuminati conspiracy was no exception.
Many authors of supposedly serious history books uphold the idea that international banking is in the hands of the Illuminati Jews, who for centuries have financed both sides fighting wars in order to create anarchy and chaos, a state of affairs that would, in their view, inevitably lead to a new world order, which the Illuminati would come to control. The bête noire of these conspiracy buffs is the Rothschild clan, immensely powerful and conveniently Jewish. History tells us something different. The only connection between the Rothschild clan and the Illuminati is that the patriarch of the Rothschild clan, Amsel Meyer, had, among many other clients, Prince William of Hesse, who seems to have been one of the first members of the Order of the Illuminati. Though it's true that the Rothschilds, in common with almost all European bankers, financed wars and revolutions, this activity, though morally questionable, does not constitute evidence that they were world conspirators or Illuminati.
There is no proven connection between Jews and the Illuminati. However, in the early 20th century, another English writer, Lady Queensborough, proclaimed and denounced the existence of a global conspiracy in which Jews and the Illuminati played a key role. Her books, though poorly researched and devoid of proper evidence, were widely read at the time, a period which we should not forget coincided with the rise of Adolf Hitler and the slaughter of 6 million European Jews, among other victims.
In spite of the conspiracy theories that link Judaism, international banking, world domination, and the Illuminati, Weishaupt himself wrote, "Jews, pagans, women, monks, and members of other societies are excluded from the order." The vast majority of Illuminati were Christians by birth. Many of them were drawn from the nobility, and were even clergymen. Women and Jews were only to be accepted in separate lodges and academies. In spite of this, it has frequently been claimed that the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, an anti-Semitic rant drawn up by the Russian Tsar's secret police, is in reality the literal transcription of a discussion of Illuminati Congress, where a group of Jews outlined plans to take over the world. Adolf Hitler used this libel to stoke hatred against the Jews, and even denounced a Jewish Masonic conspiracy. The curious thing is that many of the very same authors and conspiracy hunters who attack Jews and Freemasons do not hesitate to accuse Hitler himself as a covert Illuminatus, together with Stalin and Marx, and finally end up putting in the same bag Marxists, Bolsheviks, bankers, Jews and Nazis, a decidedly unlikely mix.
Jews have not been the only ones to be singled out. The Illuminati have also been linked to a larger or lesser degree with whatever bogeyman persecution mania the human mind can concoct. Terrorists, demons, even extraterrestrials. And it is here where information blurs into disinformation.
In 1976, a writer named Des Griffin tried to revive the belief that the origin of the Illuminati is the rebellion of the Lord's angels and the expulsion of Lucifer. The name Lucifer means him who brings light, just as the word Illuminati means the illuminated. A thesis that not even Weishaupt himself could have dreamt up. Other authors believe that the Illuminati obsession with power can be traced to our reptilian brain, the brainstem that controls our impulses, and in some few incoherent sentences conclude that the Illuminati are galactic reptiles disguised as human beings. A search on the internet for the words New World Order produces more than 1,400 million web pages, most of dubious content.
So much disinformation and stupidity is eye-catching. Why are there so many theories dedicated to the minuscule group of conspirators who supposedly disappeared more than 200 years ago? What if the paranoid are not totally wrong? After all, we compare the world in 1790 with the world today, the main Illuminati objectives have been achieved, or have at least been set in motion. Coincidence? Or is it that this wealth of conspiracy theories is just serving the purpose of drawing our attention away from certain irrefutable facts?
We shall direct all of humanity, secretly. We will influence all political transactions. Adam Weishaupt. Since its dissolution in 1790, up until the present day, the Order of the Illuminati has been the prey of choice for a legion of conspiracy hunters. Most of the accusations are downright hilarious. Satanic cults, scientific experiments in parallel dimensions, contacts with aliens, and all of the above simultaneously. So much disinformation helps conceal certain historical facts that chime perfectly well with the original Illuminati plan to generate a new world order under their control.
The saying goes that the best way to hide a secret is to shout it in the marketplace. In the case of the Illuminati, the saying holds true. Because if we analyse carefully some of the major world events of the last 200 years, we will see that the ideals of Adam Weishaupt and the Illuminati of Bavaria seem to have borne fruit. Let's start with their first postulate, to put an end to established government.
Since the creation of the Order of the Illuminati, the European monarchies have indeed lost all real power. Most modern countries are now constitutional democracies. And those which still have royal families use them as mere ornaments of power, or as tourist attractions. The Bolshevik Revolution not only put an end to the Russian monarchy, it also abolished private property, another of the Illuminati ideals. The resultant Soviet Union also complied with another Illuminati objective, soon implemented by every Western nation, to establish full, equal rights for men and women.
Let us speak now of the second postulate, unification under a single world government.
Since its creation in 1945, conspiracy mongers have considered the United Nations and its predecessor, the League of Nations, the Illuminati dream come true. A supranational agency capable of passing resolutions with which sovereign states must comply or else face the consequences. The most terrifying aspects of these theories is that in order for the UN to be created, 2 world wars had to be fought, in which millions lost their lives. Conspiracy theorists will say that the wars were just part of an Illuminati plan to lead us to where we stand today. Above all, the truth remains that Weishaupt's first postulate of creating a new world order under a unified government is closer to becoming true today than it was 200 years ago.
And what about the third objective of the order? To put an end to religion. When Weishaupt spoke of religion, he spoke of the established religion in Europe, Christianity. So what of Christianity today?
Thanks to the secret activities of the Order, or else the growing influence of humanistic and rationalistic doctrines, since the creation of the Illuminati, the Catholic Church has been steadily losing its influence. Science and reason have encroached on the territory that was once ruled by faith, and today religion occupies a limited space in our lives compared to what it had 200 years ago. A space that is continually contracting thanks to ephemeral but more contemporary styles of worship that attack the central tenets of Catholicism. Abortion, euthanasia and divorce, only the most visible symptoms of a structural weakening of the once almighty Church of Rome.
And finally, a new world order. Isn't this precisely what globalization proposes? Globalization itself seems like an Illuminati dream come true. Free flow of capital, free flow of information. The sensation that each time we are more in control of our own decisions. But all of it, capital, information, servers, internet, is in actual fact manipulated by a single world power. Are we living in a world designed by Adam Weishaupt? The next logical question is, who is the leader of the Order of the Illuminati today? Who are Weishaupt's successors, if indeed they exist?
Many groups have claimed to be the heirs of the Order of the Illuminati of Bavaria. Usually these are sects or small groups that few people take seriously and do not pose any threat. That is why conspiracy mongers aim in another direction. The United States. Their chief argument centers on the March the 6th, 1991 speech, when George H. Bush, President of the USA and former Director of the CIA, used the phrase New World Order when addressing Congress. After defeating Saddam Hussein in a war that many today regard as an imperialistic blow against an oil-producing country.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind.
The theory contradicts itself in as much as the government of the USA is actually one of the most conservative in the modern world. But is this fact enough to discount it altogether? Could it not well be another contrivance of that many-headed monster that once appeared in the form of the Order of the Illuminati? Does not the inscription Novus Ordo Seclorum, which translates as a new order of the ages, in other words a new world order, appear on the dollar bill? Were not most of the founding fathers Freemasons, along with many of the prominent public figures who followed them at a time when Freemasonry was infiltrated by the Illuminati?
One must speak at times in one voice, and sometimes in another, so that our true purpose turns out always to be unfathomable to the lower members. The end justifies the means. Adam Weishaupt.
The fact that the most powerful country in the world is run by Illuminati is without doubt a laughable theory, but a laugh that brings a chill. Because if it were true, what does the Order have in store for us in years to come? And worse, how deep is their power of infiltration? Is the power of the Illuminati simply an exaggeration by bestseller writers and fools? Or are we on our inevitable way to a new world order? United States of America, the most powerful nation of all time. A good friend to have, a terrible enemy to confront. But the world champions of democracy may be hiding a dirty little secret, because they may well be the first ever Masonic country. A nation built on secret alliances, yet still their very own citizens remain unaware. As does the entire world. Among those who instigated the American Revolution, the French Revolution and the Latin American Wars of Independence, a startling number were either paid-up Freemasons or sympathetic to Freemasonry. But particularly in the case of the United States, the Masonic influence didn't stop once independence had been achieved. Freemasonry also later participated in the planning and development of this country's political infrastructure and in the management of it up to modern day. Whether this is a good or bad thing depends on one's opinion about Freemasonry. So first, we should understand what Freemasonry is all about.
Freemasonry is a secret brotherhood whose origins go back to the builders' guilds of the Middle Ages. Maçon in French means bricklayer. It was born out of the need of these craftsmen to aggressively protect their skills, and by doing so, to maintain their status and livelihoods. In addition, their secrecy helped save their brethren from official persecution, since many of the Masonic ideals clashed head-on with those of the Church in Rome. By the end of the Middle Ages, Masonry had evolved into Freemasonry, or Free and Accepted Masons. Free for not admitting slaves or serfs into their ranks, and accepted for now accepting not only builders, but also anyone who swore allegiance to their rules. Freemasonry became an anti-clerical, an anti-monarchical secret society that kept many of the symbols and rituals of the original builders' guilds. Though it became a civilian social organization with avowedly humanistic objectives, on many occasions its operations were secret and unmistakably political.
For centuries, Freemasonry was officially persecuted by the church and the establishment. However, many nobles and clergymen did in fact belong to this secret society. Its ability to attract even those who were supposed to be against it made Freemasonry all that more intriguing and disturbing.
The origins of Freemasonry in the United States go back to 1682, when Scotsman John Skene, an active member of the Scottish Aberdeen Lodge, took residence in the American colony of New England. 3 years later, he was made Deputy Governor of West Jersey. Jonathan Belcher, who was Royal Governor of Massachusetts and New Hampshire, became a Freemason in London in 1704, and boasted of being the first Freemason to be born in the United States.
By 1776, what we now call the United States were barely 13 small colonies crowded upon the East Coast. They had been founded by English Protestant Puritans, the famous Pilgrims, who had been expelled from England by the powerful Anglican Church. The rest of the country was a rich and vast terrain inhabited exclusively by native tribes, an unexplored land that was more often than not conquered at gunpoint.
This was an era where men worked, fought and dreamed while God watched them from the pulpit, or so they believed. In that rugged landscape, within a social structure dominated by the Puritans, the first Freemasons began to disseminate the revolutionary ideas they had brought from Europe. Ideas of religious freedom, independence, science, rationalism, and humanism.
The emerging American Freemasons were strongly influenced by the Rosicrucians, another secret society that was created in Germany in the early 15th century for the study of the hidden arts. The American Freemasons adopted many of the Rosicrucians' mystical ways, as well as their Greek and Egyptian symbols, symbols that can be seen in many American national emblems today.
The Rosicrucians claimed to have founded their first American lodge in 1694 in Philadelphia, when William Penn, the Quaker who founded the first American community to advocate total religious liberty, Pennsylvania, invited Johann Jacob Zimmermann's Chapter of Perfection to leave Germany and join them. Zimmermann, a Rosicrucian, believed that Christ would return in the year 1700. So in 1694, they built an observatory on American soil to watch for the return of the Lord.
To Zimmermann's regret, Jesus did not show up, and the Rosicrucians subsequently dispersed around Pennsylvania. Some of them became wandering spiritual healers who used amulets and staged ceremonies to ensure good crops and to drive away bad luck.
In 1717, the Great Lodge of England was founded. It claimed authority over all other lodges in the English colonies. But the American lodges rejected the right of the Great Lodge to exert control over them, and they did not recognize its authority. The Great Lodge of England countered this by encouraging the creation of several other faithful lodges in the colonies.
It's important to point out that the uprising of the American Masonic lodges against the English ones predates the American Revolution by many years. Therefore, whether this was planned or not, they became the very first bearers of revolutionary thought. As they grew in number, the vision of independence spread across the whole country. In 1776, the United States declared their independence, and soon after, their Constitution was adopted. The contribution of Freemasonry in these events was fundamental, since many brethren were involved.
In 1732, Benjamin Franklin was initiated into the Turn Tavern Lodge in Philadelphia. That same year, James Oglethorpe, founder of the Savannah Colony, which would later become the state of Georgia, created the Solomon Lodge. It was here that the two men destined to become the first Jewish-American Freemasons, Moses and Daniel Nunes, were initiated.
Regardless of their origin, these English and native lodges spread like wildfire throughout the country, fueled by the prestige that came with being a member of them. In 1740, most respectable men in the New England colonies either were or wanted to become Freemasons.
In 1773, a group of outraged Mohawks staged a protest against what they considered unfair English custom duties by dumping overboard the tea cargo of 3 ships. It was the famous Boston Tea Party. Today it is suspected that many of those supposed Mohawks were in fact disguised Freemasons who belonged to the St. Andrew's Lodge of Boston, a lodge that curiously did not convene that night.
The church was particularly infuriated by the fact that many Freemasons supported deism, a Christian philosophy that believes in a personal God and upholds a purely rational interpretation of Scripture, discrediting revelation.
According to deistic principles, the Bible holds many truths and wisdom, but it is not inspired by God. Deists also deny that Jesus is the Son of God, and claim that faith is no substitute for observable facts. They do not believe in prophets or miracles. God can only be known through experience and knowledge. For the Church of England, as well as for the Puritans, deism was clearly a heresy that had to be wiped out.
The persecution of heretic Freemasons was relentless, but nothing could stop them. Soon the British colonies in America would take their first great steps towards liberty, and in their footsteps the trace of Freemasonry could be clearly seen.
Freemason and revolutionary ideas blended well. Masonic principles chimed with the American culture of the era, steeped as it was in notions of fraternity, liberty, and equality. Pennsylvania was a particularly fertile breeding ground for Freemasonry, since its inhabitants considered it to be the promised land for those who had suffered persecution in Europe. Here, Freemason symbols even appeared on crockery and home furniture.
Although Freemasons were in favour of equality, slavery was still in existence in the United States, and they did not accept black people. So those freed slaves began to found their own lodges. Such was the case of the Prince Hall Lodge.
In 1775, while still under British rule, the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge was created in Boston as a segregated chapter for free blacks, named after an emancipated slave, Prince Hall. During the War of Independence, many of these black Freemasons, including Prince Hall, joined the revolutionary forces and fought with the Continental Army against the British. Today, the Prince Hall fraternity has over 4,500 lodges worldwide, with a membership of over 300,000 Freemasons.
In 1776, the United States of America declared their independence, and soon after, their Constitution was adopted. The contribution of Freemasonry in these events was fundamental, since many brethren were involved. But it didn't end there. Freemasonry's involvement went a lot deeper, and it was at the foundation of the whole governmental system. So one wonders, what previous oaths had the Freemason founding fathers taken before placing their right hand on the new constitution? And how much of what has been built since was done to protect the interest of the Freemasons?
16% of the signatories of the Declaration of Independence were Freemasons. A quarter of the signatories of the Articles of Confederation were Freemasons. And a third of the signatories of the Constitution were Freemasons. By the time George Washington took the oath of office as first President of the USA, a third of the governors of the original colonies were Freemasons too. Freemason John A.C. Muhlenberg was the first Speaker of the House of Representatives. Freemasons John J. Blair and William Cushing were justices in the first Supreme Court. Close to 46% of the officers of the Continental Army, or Independence Army, were Freemasons, as were almost half of their 78 generals.
Now, if we heed to the Freemasonry's ideals of liberty and fraternity and focus on its positive contributions, maybe it wouldn't matter if the United States is a Masonic country. However, we are speaking of a secret society that for centuries has practiced strange rituals and taken mysterious oaths, and whose practices have all taken place behind closed doors. So what if the most important democracy in the world really responded to the interests of small groups of people whose actual goals are kept secret from its own citizens? How much of the phrase "all men are equal under the law" remains true when we discover that the architects of this great democracy belong to societies whose members protect each other and won't even let their own women join?
After the Declaration of Independence, American lodges declared their own independence and stopped concealing their existence. They began to open headquarters in public buildings for all to see. This increased their popularity. Masonic halls were often used for social and civil gatherings, since they were usually the best venues in town. In spite of their declared non-political affiliation, Masonic lodges indeed became active in politics, and often operated openly and side by side with the established political parties.
Today we can see numerous traces that confirm the presence of Freemasonry in America. They are in plain view all around us, from the more conspicuous Masonic temples to the lesser-known symbols that are incorporated in its very own currency. And that is only the tip of the iceberg. What is actually below the surface? What is it that these symbols mean, that almost 300 million citizens swear by every day? What is the true ideology of the most powerful country in the world? And how does it affect their actions? And where will it lead them?
In the early 18th century, Freemason became particularly strong and influential in North America, where it played a key role in the creation of what today we know as the United States.